Miracle at Camp Friendship. Chapter 13. Back to Nature. As we headed out on the hiking trail, we were almost immediately in thick woods. It was like being in a different world. We were surrounded by tree trunks, all sizes and kinds. Most of the trees were bare or losing their leaves, but here and there was a strand of evergreens. Some were tall, magnificent, pines with swishy long needles. Others were more like bushes with delicate, almost lacy branches. Pastor Gentle called them hemlocks. Under the canopy of the large spreading branches were smaller trees, struggling to reach the sun, as well as patches of brambles with their thorns bare now, that fall had taken most of their leaves. Underfoot spread a gorgeous carpet of leaves in all the fall colours. The early morning showers had left them wet and slippery. We happily tramped along, the wet leaves sticking to our shoes, twigs snapping and popping as we trumped on them. We often had to step over rotting tree trunks and trailing vines. All the summer wildflowers had disappeared, but now and then we did see a holly bush with its bright red berries. Even our noses realised something was different. The sweet, smoky smell of logs burning in the fireplace was replaced with the damp, musty smell of dead leaves. Sandy sneezed a few times. "I think I'm allergic to mould," she said. "There must be a lot of it in these woods." "More than likely," said Pastor Gentle. "In summer you would smell honeysuckle, wild roses, and other wild flowers. But now it's dead leaves, wet wood, and moss. Once the sun has had an opportunity to dry things out, you won't notice it so much." The forest was full of activity. Overhead, birds chirping excitedly flitted from branch to branch. I suppose they were warning their friends that we were coming. There was activity closer to the ground also, mostly squirrels. They were digging in the leaves and racing up tree trunks. Pastor Gentle said they had to fill their storehouses with acorns and other nuts before winter came. Once we even saw a rabbit. Seeing all the animals reminded Christy of the conversation at supper the night before. "Do you think we'll see any deer today? I'd like to pet one. I did that once at a petting zoo." "It's possible that we could see some at a distance," answered Mr. Friendson, "but I am sure we are making too much noise for them to be close. Deer in the wild are a lot different from deer raised in a petting zoo. Here, man is their enemy, not their friend." We continued to tromp along, captivated with all the new sights and sounds and smells of the forest. Maybe that's why most of us completely forgot about collecting things for the scavenger hunt. One of us did remember, though. "Here's a red leaf," said Hapford, unexpectedly bending over to scoop it up. Ronnie, like me, was taking in all the fascinating things of the forest and not watching ahead. Hapford's unexpected stop caught him off guard, and he tripped right over Hapford, who was in a very awkward position with his head down. They both ended up sprawling in the wet leaves. Immediately Ronnie accused angrily. "Why did you stop like that?" He balled up one fist and tackled poor Hapford. Reginald and I grabbed at Ronnie's jacket and pulled him off. He was about ready to sock me too, so I had to do some quick thinking. "Ronnie, you can't hit me. I'm your buddy," I said in a loud voice. It worked. He dropped his fist and started brushing himself off, muttering under his breath. The ruckus had gotten the attention of both Pastor Gentle and Mr. Thriftmore. They dutifully inspected both boys to see that they were okay. It gave us all an opportunity to catch our breath, and since fall leaves were everywhere, other buddies began collecting too. That's when I realised it was happening again. Buddies were working together and feeling special loyalty to one another, even Ronnie and I. It was a good opportunity to bring up what had been bothering me since breakfast. "Ronnie, do you remember last night and how scared you were?" I asked. He stiffened and lowered his eyebrows. "I wasn't scared. You were the scaredy cat," he denied. "But I heard you pray," I protested. "You were dreaming, that's all. Why would I want to talk with Pastor Gentle? Whoops. He had let it out. I hadn't been dreaming. You really do need the Lord, I said. We're buddies, and I want you to know Jesus. If you're my buddy, leave me alone. I didn't say any more about his prayer, and we continued picking up leaves until we found the ones that suited us, bright in colour and perfectly shaped. We even found some acorns. Not far away, the stranger was watching, unbeknownst to us. Voices carry very well in the forest, and we could hear what Ronnie had said. What a foolish young man, he whispered, and, thinking of his own youth, sadness clouded his eyes. Watching us and listening to our conversations, the flood of memories continued coming. How he wished he could go back and change the wasted 14 years. Since we've stopped, said Mr. Friendson, let's have a little science lesson. Do you know why leaves turn colours? Because it's fall, answered J. Michael confidently. Well, that's when they change, but that's not why they change, said Mr. Friendson. Doesn't it have something to do with having a frost? Suggested Acey. That has something to do with it. Reginald was about to burst with the answer, but he gave the others a chance first. Finally, he had to speak up. A drop of temperature induces the breakdown of chlorophyll in deciduous broad leaves. That permits the underlying xanthophyll or carotene pigment to appear. Chilling temperatures along with shortened daylight hours also disrupt photosynthesis and prompt the leaves to wither. So what does that mean? Asked Ronnie. He was as much in the dark as I was. Racer spoke up. Doesn't it mean that when the days grow shorter and the temperature drops, the cold ruins the green colour that is in leaves? Other colours that were hidden all the time begin to show up. That's very simply put, agreed Mr. Friendson, but it's also fairly accurate. Behind a tree, not far away, we found out later, our spy could hardly keep from laughing out loud. It was the first time he had felt anything close to happiness in a long time. He wanted to run out and say, Mr. Friendson, I know why you know so much about all of this. We both heard about the trees and animals when we were boys and went on hikes at Camp Friendship. I know where you are headed today. I've already been there and had my breakfast. Not Mr. Friendson, not Pastor Gentle, not any of us knew we had company on this hike, but it was time to move on. The trail began to lead along a high, sharp ridge. We were also heading west, according to Ronnie. The sun was a lot higher in the sky now and shining through the trees. Banks of fluffy clouds could be seen in the distance. In places, we could see out over the valley. Mr. Friendson didn't stop to let us climb out on any of the rocks. Was I ever glad of that? Tramp, tramp. Things were starting to get pretty monotonous. When up ahead, Racer darted off like a scared rabbit into the underbrush. Where are you going? Yelled Booker, his buddy. Wait for me. I see an empty bird's nest, Racer called back. Come and help me get it. The rest of us looked, but didn't see the bird's nest. At least not at first. It was well hidden. Besides, there would only be one. Why should the rest of us take the chance of finding a snake or even a bear? Mr. Friendson quickly followed the boys to see that they didn't get into a dangerous situation. The underbrush was so thick that we really could not see what was going on. Suddenly we heard Mr. Friendson's voice. No, no, leave it alone. That's not a bird's nest. It's a hornet's nest. Hornets? Screamed a voice that sounded very much like Racer's. Next we heard thrashing and crashing. Yo! The thrashing and crashing continued. It sounded like Booker and Racer were fighting something or trying to escape. Ah! That was Booker. It was me. It has me by the hair. On the trail, the rest of us stood still, with our big eyes and our mouths open. We expected to see swarming hornets or something worse come bounding out at us at any time. Stand still, shouted Mr. Friendson, still hidden in the underbrush. The crashing and thrashing finally stopped. In a few moments he came out, grasping two red-faced boys. There were rips in their clothes and scratches on their faces and hands. They had gone after a hornet's nest all right, but thankfully it was an empty one. The real monster was in the brambles. When Booker and Racer started thrashing around to get away from the hornets they thought were there, they ran into brambles. The more they tried to get out, the more they get caught and scratched. The woods is no place to lose your head. Pastor Gentle pulled the first aid kit out of one of his big pockets and handed it to Mr. Friendson. Racer and Booker flinched a little as he began cleaning their scratches and rubbing on a first aid cream. "You'll be as good as new by the time we get back," said Pastor Gentle encouragingly. "Those brambles put up quite a fight, didn't they?" He chuckled a little. The boys were smiling and seemed not much for the worse for wear. As Pastor Gentle put it, "There was just one thing. Booker, please forgive me for not getting you into such a mess," said Racer in an unapologetic tone. "If you hadn't followed me, you wouldn't have gotten all scratched up. Look, you even tore your jacket." "Oh, I'll heal," said Booker bravely, now that the real scare was over. "I forgive you, and I think Mum can patch my jacket. Every time I see the patch, I will remember that we are buddies. It's almost as good as having a brother, wouldn't you say?" We were soon on our way again. The sun was getting high, and I was hot from all the hiking and hungry. "How soon do we stop to eat?" I called to Mr. Friendson. "It's not far now," he called back over his shoulder. Had we gone a few yards into the woods, past that bramble patch, instead of on down the forest path, we would have come upon a sad scene. Someone who knew these woods better than any of us sat on a rock with his head in his hands. He had heard Racer ask for forgiveness, and he had heard Booker say, "I forgive you." That's what he wanted too, forgiveness. But was forgiveness possible? Not only did he need to ask God to forgive him, there were other people he had hurt. He needed to ask their forgiveness too. But that would be so hard. He sat and thought for a long while. Finally, he decided not to follow us any more, and with deep sadness, he headed off in the opposite direction.